In this video, we'll learn how to add parameters to a template class method in p5js. Here in my example code, I've got a template class named eyeball, and I've got two methods. So the constructor method and a method called show. The technique that we'll look at here will work for any method that's part of a template class, whether it's the constructor or a different method. So right now, when I make a new instance of this class, the constructor method is automatically called. And here I can see I'm using the random function to assign a value to this.x and this.y, my two instance variables. So up here in setup, when I use that new keyword and create an instance of my eyeball object, I don't have to include any additional arguments in the parentheses. The constructor function just runs. It doesn't need any extra information. But maybe instead of using the random function to assign a random horizontal and vertical location on the screen, I'd like to be able to specify where these objects will go. So in that case, I could add a couple of parameter variables inside of my constructor method parentheses. And this approach works pretty much the same way as if we were assigning parameters to a function that was being defined outside of a class template. So here I'll make myself two new variables, new x and new y. And we'll replace these two lines. Actually, I'll just comment these out and copy paste them. So again, instead of using that random function, I'll pass in both of my new parameters and assign them to the instance variables. So to get this to work, we'll need to change our code up here where we're creating new instances of our eyeball objects, and we'll need to specify the values that we like to assign to the x and y instance variables. So let's make one that's right in the center of the screen and one that's slightly more to the left. So you can see now, just by making those simple tweaks to my constructor function, I'm able to pass in arguments anytime I make a new instance. Those flow down to the constructor method and are passed along into each of my instance variables. Now we could take a similar approach with this show method, which is drawing an ellipse filled with white at the location that's specified by this.x and this.y for each instance. So maybe instead of white, I'd like to be able to specify the color that these objects will be filled. So I'll just go ahead and insert a new parameter, and I'll call this new col, right between the parentheses of my show method. And I'll just replace that 255, which is white, with my new col parameter. Now, here is a key piece of strategy that we'll need to think about anytime we're making template classes. And that is, do I want that color variable to be part of the instance, to be accessible the same way that this.x and this.y is? Now, if I don't, I can just leave my method as is. And if I were to come up into my draw block where I'm calling those show methods, I could specify different colors. So let's make a couple of color objects to pass as arguments. So maybe we'll make one red, and let's set the other to green. So you can see I get the functionality of being able to pass in a new color. But let's say I wanted to query each of my objects and see which color is assigned to it at any given moment. So maybe I just do a print to the console and have I1 spit out its color. Now you can see I'm getting this undefined warning down in my console. So let's go ahead and see if we could fix that. So the reason we're getting that undefined is because we haven't set up this color parameter to be part of the instance. So it doesn't have that this dot syntax. It's not actually an accessible part of each one of our duplicates of this class template. So if we wanted that, I could type something like this dot col equals new col, and then we could use that instance variable to set our fill. Now if we come back up here and change to the correct instance variable name, you can see I'm getting that color object from the I1 instance of my eyeball class. Okay, so that's just a quick overview of how to add parameters to template class methods in p5js.